Hi everyone, it's Elizabeth here. So I wanted to do this video in regards to 7 signs that your marriage is failing. There are so many signs you can read, you can go on Google and read lists that are like 18 signs your marriage is failing. I think just because your marriage is failing, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's over, but it definitely takes two to tango. So, certain things like divorce support, marriage counseling, counseling support groups, things like that can definitely help save your marriage. I wanted to give 7 different signs that are different from your traditional arguing, cheating, kind of the money problems, things like that. Those are kind of the givens. People know that. When people start being secretive about like money and stuff like that's not really a good sign. So I wanted to share these thoughts not only based on my experience, but also, I guess, accumulation of stories that I've heard from other people who have gotten divorced, from clients, but also from friends and people from divorce support group. So the first sign that your marriage is failing is with distance. Distance is generally not a good thing, even in the dating world. Generally, you want people to come together because you're building a life with one another. But once there's distance, there's always going to be some level of independence that should be maintained in a relationship. That is very healthy when two people can maintain goals in their lives that work together, but also on the same trajectory path. That's very healthy, especially because we don't live in an old society where it's just you knock up the woman and she's the caretaker and he's out, cultivating the farm or working the job type of thing to sustain money for the family. But if there is some form of distance in any form of fashion, distance in communication, distance as in you don't want to spend time with each other, you're starting to do or have recreational activities and hobbies that are outside of certain things that you guys would do together, like you're not doing them anymore, that's generally not a good sign. So just note distance in many different areas of life. The second sign that your marriage might be failing is by not wearing the wedding ring. Now, this is super controversial. A lot of people, sometimes you just get older, you get fatter, and you just don't wear your ring because it's unimportant. I didn't wear my diamond engagement ring because I worked in fitness. So what I did is I got a thin wedding band that I wore in place of it. I don't think that's uncommon. That's very common. But at some point, once you're noticing certain things are starting to fall through the cracks and one person is not wearing their wedding ring, either they purposefully took it off or something such as like you go on a beach vacation, you obviously don't want your ring lost in the ocean, so one person or both people might take them off, but then it's kind of like there's not really a care or a desire to put that back on. That's not a good sign. Also, it's not a good sign if you've never had a conversation with it and your spouse is coming home with your wedding ring off. That is a clear indicator something's happening. That could even be a sign of cheating. If your spouse is going out on a Friday night and he or she is coming home without the wedding ring on, that's a huge red flag. So just note that unless there's a clear conversation or something is going on with your job, there's certain leniencies in terms of not wearing your wedding ring, but the wedding ring is a clear indicator. That is a clear symbol in our society that you are taken. And so that's kind of another red flag as well if somebody stops wearing their wedding ring, especially without any form of formal discussion. Number 3 goes a little bit along with distance, but it's sleeping in separate beds. I've spoken with many, many people. Once their downfall of their marriage happens, sometimes the downfall happens takes a year sometimes or longer to completely fall through the cracks. Sleeping in separate beds is a sign of distance. It's not normal. There might be some medical conditions and certain things like that have happened, but generally if a person needs some space where they need to sleep in the separate bed, that's not a good sign. Number 4 is the intimacy conversation. So obviously as time goes on, there is a lack of sex that happens in your life, especially once you have children. These things happen. It's very, very normal. But once people lose interest in sex, or they're not wanting to have sex, or they're refusing to have sex, or refusing to initiate sex, that's generally not a good thing, because a lot of times what happens is people start fantasizing about a life outside of their marriage, and that's where people start to go into either pornography, or they end up cheating, or they end up leaving the marriage for somebody else because they're more sexually attracted to them. Refusal in sex is generally not a good thing, and this can be very, very this can happen for a lot of reasons. Some people, it's not that they don't find them sexually attractive, it's just that they're not communicating, they shut down. And when people shut down emotionally, they're not attracted to the other person sexually. So there definitely has to be some deep and intimate conversations that have to happen to understand why this is going on. Number 5 is kind of a standard one. It's chronic arguing. Obviously, if arguing is leading toward any form of abuse, whether you're being abused verbally or sexually, physically, emotionally, spiritually, you got to put your foot down. That's not a good sign of being abused. But chronic arguing and not getting along is also generally not a good sign as well, because the two people aren't seeing eye to eye. And sometimes two people, one or both individuals, are being super stubborn. And there's a bald eagle flying outside of my apartment. Sorry, I was kind of distracted there for a second. It's kind of cool as I'm talking about this. But thanks, God. Yeah, chronic arguing is just not good in general. And I think it's really, really important for people to get on the same page and not be so stubborn and see the other person's side of the story. That is where I think a lot of things tend to fall through the cracks. It's because one person is being absolutely stubborn. So the sixth thing is that a person is refusing to work things through. A lot of guys don't handle their emotions properly, and one person, doesn't matter if you're male or female, you might refuse to work it through, or you might refuse to go to marriage counseling. And some people, unfortunately, keep their thoughts on divorce undercover and under the radar because they're mentally exiting themselves. So they're not going to want to put forth the effort to work things through. So if one person is refusing marriage counseling, or refusing to work things through, or actually put the effort in, this is generally not a good sign. And the 7th thing is that one person, or maybe both people, compare your marriage to others. I had this in mind. I got so frustrated when my ex compared us to a happily newly wedded couple that was 4 to 12 months within their marriage. That is completely different, comparing it to people who are, reaching the 7 and 10 year mark, or especially in the relationship in general, when you might not necessarily have been married for 10 years, but you've been together for 10 years. I think if people are comparing yourselves to other couples, that's, one, it's not fair, but two, it's also a sign that this person is starting to think of some other things in their life. And it's also kind of maybe a hint or a sign. It's like, oh, look at how happy Susie and Johnny are. So if they're saying that, sometimes it's like a Freudian slip. You know what I mean? It's generally something in their subconscious is coming out, or they're too afraid to talk to you about, how happy you guys once were. So they're kind of comparing yourself to other marriages. So just take that as a sign or a red flag that something's going on subconsciously in their mind. There are so many different reasons why marriages fail. Not all of them are the same, obviously, but it generally seems like a lot of the same common issues. It's lack of communication, lack of sex, money problems, being secretive, and things like that. If your spouse is being secretive, holy hell, start the conversation. That is not a good sign by any means. Some people are secretive for all sorts of reasons. Sometimes they want their freedom. Sometimes, they're planning this exit strategy, so they're putting up that distance in that space so you're not being let in to really understand what's going on. So human psychology is really complex. It's fascinating and it's frustrating, because people do things, and a lot of times people are too afraid to be super upfront and honest about certain stuff. And that can be, I guess, a good or a bad thing. So anyways, if your marriage is failing, I'm so sorry. There is hope, but sometimes it can be too late as well. I don't know. I'm not an expert in this world of relationships. I've just had a ton of experiences to understand the psychology and the red flags behind things, because a lot of times people, their actions, their thoughts and behaviors do come out from a subconscious standpoint. And I understand those things because I've really have delved deep into my mindset, not only through my journeys of yoga and meditation and working in health and fitness and understanding human behavior, but just working with human emotions every day. I hear these things from people. So there are a lot more rhymes and reasons why marriages are failing, but if you have that little gut intuition in your life that this isn't working, you have to kind of trust that as well. Balance the logic and the spirit. Look at, trust your gut, but also look at the logical steps and reasons why this is happening. Because something's going on in the other person's head that you kind of need to be a scientist and pick it through. If you have any questions or comments, I would love to hear about your thoughts on what you think of certain signs that a marriage is failing, especially if you've been through it. We can all help each other. And hopefully we can help each other save marriages as well. I do think the reality, if you're looking at life and marriage and love from a spiritual lens, God and the light wants marriages to work through. Darkness does not. Darkness wants to continue to rape this planet of the plague and kind of, fill our minds with these false hopes and things like that. So anyways, I hope you have a great day. If you can, please subscribe to this channel. You can also help me on Patreon if you believe in my voice and my message. So thank you for liking, sharing, and subscribing. See you guys later. Bye.